How can you connect to your purpose? That's the title of this talk. How can you connect to your purpose? Well, listen, for me to be able to help you to do that, I'm going to have to make a shift in your consciousness. What do I mean by consciousness? Well, apart from that really expensive bit in between naps, if you've got 3 daughters like I have, it is really expensive. I'm also talking about a shift in your awareness, okay, a shift in your feeling. So I'd like everyone to stand up, please. Everyone stand up, okay? And now clap 3 times. 1, 2, 3, okay? Now reach up as high as you can reach, okay? Now reach a little bit further. Okay, now sit down. Thank you very much. That extra inch, by the way, is what super successful people do every day. It's the little bit extra that makes the difference. Okay? Now turn to the person next to you and say, I'm alive. I'm alive. Fantastic. Okay, right, we're less than 2 minutes in. Okay, less than 2 minutes in. I've already given you a clue on how to be super successful. I've got you to state your purpose to the world, and I've had a standing ovation. It's TED first. Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, that's it, done. What do I mean by stating your purpose to the world? The author, Richard Bach, said, here is a test to discover whether your mission on earth is complete. If you're alive, it isn't. Now, you've all stated that you're alive, so I'm assuming you have a purpose. Now I'm going to try and help you connect to that purpose. So I want to start by telling you a story about a young man named Alfie. Alfie was an Aborigine. He was a very unusual young Aboriginal man. He had a very well-paid job. He worked on the river cruises in Catherine Gorge in the Northern Territories in Australia. Has anyone actually been to Catherine? I hear it's beautiful, stunning place to be, full of crocodiles, but stunning place. Now, everyone loved Alfie. Alfie was wonderful. He was very good with difficult tourists. He was very handsome, so the ladies adored him. Okay, Alfie had a fantastic support network. His family loved him. And what Alfie loved more than anything else in the world was his 18-month-old son. So why did Alfie throw himself off the Catherine Bridge, smashing his face into the rocks below with such violent force that his family could hardly identify his features in the mortuary? Why would this young man with so much to live for choose to end his life in such a violent manner? The mentor and Indigenous support officer in Catherine works for Nitmiluk Tours, who run the river cruises. Her name is Tessa Pollock. She is an anthropologist and a psychologist. She's worked with the Aboriginals for a number of decades now, and in fact she's writing a book about it. Tessa Pollock is also my aunt, from my mother's side. When she went to see Alfie's mother greeted her with a handshake like so. It's a white fella custom, saved only for sorry business. Alfie's mother, although she was saddened by his passing, they don't call it death, they call it passing. Although she was saddened, she was neither surprised nor confused. Alfie had been hearing the voices of his ancestors in his head for the past few weeks and had chosen to go to their calling. Apparently, they were lonely. Now, Alfie's mother had worked in the healthcare profession. She knew about schizophrenia. Alfie himself hardly drank. He abhorred drugs. He didn't have a history of mental health difficulties. Okay? Interestingly enough, a few weeks later, Aunt Tessa was on one of the river cruises and she was speaking to some travel operators and her chair lurched forward suddenly. Jamie, who's another Indigenous worker, said that it was Alfie's spirit playing with her. When they smoked out his spirit, because they don't talk about death and dying, when they smoked out his spirit, they smoked it out of everywhere apart from the gorge, which was where he was due to remain. Now I want you to contrast that story with the one of Jane Tomlinson. Do you remember Jane Tomlinson? She was MBE, CBE. She raised £1.85 million for charity. In 2007, she passed away, having had a 7-year battle with a cancer that she was told that she had 1 year to live in the year 2000. Do you remember that? Yeah, the Prime Minister at the time, Gordon Brown, said that Jane's mission in life was a simple one, to live every day with purpose and to help others. Okay? Now, to me, the difference between those two stories is Jane chose to live a life full of purpose. Alfie fulfilled his purpose. Now, I told you those two stories because they are quite extreme. And I would hazard a guess that you've already told me that you're alive, so you have a purpose. And whatever purpose that is, and however that plays out in your life, it'll be somewhere between those two extremes. And as a kind of balance, I wanted to give you my story. The reason, by the way, I don't have any PowerPoint presentation is because if I want to tell you about connection, I thought it would be quite good to connect with you directly. And if I give you something else to read, that's another filtration system you have to use. Because what I'm going to be talking about today is about thought, okay? Now, my story started my story didn't start 5 years ago. I'm slightly older than 5. But my purpose started 5 years ago. And I was at a party, a 40th birthday party in Somerset. And a shaman came up to me and said, I have a message for you. December 2012. And that was it. She was off. Now, my 2-year-old daughter at the time said, Daddy, why don't you Googles it? So I Googled it. And I found out a lot about the Mayan prophecy. And of course, what we now know is it's not about the end of the world. It's actually about the end of an era, the end of the age of reason, and the beginning of the age of consciousness and enlightenment. So my story started really then. Now, the first quote, and I'm going to give you a series of quotes that have changed my life, and some of them might resonate with you, and I hope they do. And the first quote that I came across, because I looked into shamanism, and I found a guy by the name of Carlos Castaneda, who was an author. And he said the following: all of us, from time to time, have a cubic centimeter of chance that pops up in front of our eyes. And it is our task to be alert, so that when that cubic centimeter arrives, we have the necessary speed and prowess to pick it up. Whoa, I thought, okay, I'm going to need to change my life here because I need to be ready for that cubic centimeter of chance. So I did. I changed my habits. My ex-wife at the time was and is my greatest teacher in that the power of forgiveness brings with it such freedom. Now, I started my journey, and I started eating differently, and I didn't drink as much, and I started exercising, and I started preparing myself for this journey. But the most important thing I did was I started to learn. I started to read. I started to read a lot. Now, has anyone actually joined Amazon Prime here? It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, you make the order, and 10 seconds later, the doorbell rings. I mean, it's incredible. Although in our case, that's actually true, because Amazon moved their depot to be next door to our house, so they saved on delivery costs. Yeah? I didn't really. No. So I started reading a lot. I started reading everything. I started reading about cosmology and quantum physics and spirituality and business and finance. I became like, Keanu Reeves in The Matrix, really soaking it all up. And one of the first books I came across was a book called Synchronicity by Joseph Jaworski. Has anyone heard of Synchronicity by Joseph Jaworski? Joseph Jaworski's father was a very interesting man. He was Nixon's trial lawyer in the Watergate scandal. Joseph Jaworski wrote this book about how he set up the American Leadership Foundation. It's a fascinating book. And in it, you get to realize that there's no such thing as coincidences. And to listen to the universe, because the messages are there and they're guiding you all the time. Okay? Now, one of the guys that he talked about was a guy called David Bohm, not the singer David Bowie, David Bohm. He wrote a book called Wholeness and the Implicate Order. He's one of the most highly regarded theoretical physicists of the 20th century. Now, in this book, David said this very interesting quote: different people are not that separate. They are enfolded into and a manifestation of the whole. It is only through an abstraction that they appear separate. Everything is included in everything else. And if you look deep into yourself, you are looking deep into the very essence of mankind itself. Whoa, took a hit off that one. And it reminded me of a quote in 850 AD by Huang Bo, who said this: a perception, as sudden as blinking, that subject and object are one, will lead you to a deeply mysterious and wordless understanding, and by this understanding you will discover the truth. There's a lot of time difference between those two quotes, but they kind of told me the same thing. So I started to really read about physics and the quantum universe, and in the quantum universe, it's fascinating. Has anyone heard of quantum entanglement, where they split the electron and they spin the electron of one side that's thousands of kilometers away from the other electron, and the other electron spins at exactly the same time, bypassing the speed of light? They call it the fourth dimension in physics. David Bohm was actually a friend of Einstein. One of my favorite Einstein quotes, by the way, is "Don't trust everything you read on Facebook." It's a wonderful quote. Not well known. So I started to read this. And one of the other quotes I came across was by someone called Jim Hamilton, again an author. And he said, science is discovering that thought as a representation of consciousness is about as fundamental as we can get. So I was starting to be pointed towards thought and thinking, which is quite interesting. And this is actually how I've ended up being a coach about mindset. I coach entrepreneurs. And David Bohm also said about thought, he said, what is the source of all trouble? I believe basically the source is thought. So there was someone else talking about thought and thinking. And then I cracked it. I came across a man called Sydney Banks. And Sydney Banks said the following: one of the most beautiful things that a human being can realize is the mystical bridge between the form and the formless. That bridge is thought. Wow. Here was someone pointing to the answer for me in my journey. He also said, it's not what you think, it's the fact that you think. It's not what you think, it's the fact that you think. He's talking about the principle of thought. He's talking about something which has been here forever. Gravity has been here forever. It didn't just arrive when Newton discovered it or named it. We're always using the principle of gravity. We're also using the principle of thought and the principle of consciousness. We are alive, we are conscious, and we think. Boom, reality. That's how we get our reality. Now, there seems to be some sort of intelligence behind the system. Max Planck, the father of quantum physics, said, we must assume that behind matter lies a conscious and intelligent mind. We must assume. This was the father of quantum physics. Now, I know this intelligence exists because our daughter, Annie Rose, by the way, I'm here with my partner today, Victoria Groom. I met her through listening to the universe. Unfortunately, Annie Rose, our daughter, can't be here today. She's looking after our dog, Wellington. So she's not really. Who's not that well, unfortunately. Poor thing. We're trying to get him lined up with all the eating habits, you know, and Annie Rose has got teething problems at the moment. We're doing the Pavlov's dog. Yeah, so every day at 4:30 and 6:30, my bell goes off on my phone, but Wellington goes into the corner and pants. He thinks he's a boxer. These jokes aren't going down too well, are they? They're right. So listening to the universe. And so there is a fundamental principle at work here. You know, we use gravity all the time. We're using it right now. You're all using it right now. But it's the principle that I'm talking about here. We're always using it. And so there's an intelligence behind the system. Now, when Annie Rose was 2 weeks old, she had a bout of reflux. We as her parents didn't know what to do, but she did. 2 weeks old. She tilted her head back and just allowed the air to come through. There is an intelligence behind the system. And it's this intelligence behind the system that will help guide you. It's helping guide you now. Have you ever lost your car keys? And you keep going back to the same place 10 times, thinking that they're suddenly going to appear? And then suddenly, when you're not thinking about it, pop, I remember where I left them. That's the wisdom. That's the insight. That's the guiding force of the universe I'm talking about here. And the way to connect to it is to listen. I coach a lot of people, and I've helped people with mental health difficulties. And the problems that they seem to have are because they are butting up against life. Have you heard of the expression, Don't let life happen to you, let life happen through you. As water is the conduit of life, thought is the conduit of experience. And the problem most people have when they butt up against life is they're trying to change, alter, or stop thinking. You can't change something that will continuously flow. They're like the clouds in the sky. New thinking will always come along and replace old thinking. It's only when we get in the flow of the system that we actually start to live our life in flow with the system. Yeah? If you're rowing and you're rowing upstream and it's really hard, you don't have to turn around. Just stop rowing. How can you connect to the infinite intelligence that is there? Listen. Listen. Lao Tzu. To the mind that is still, the universe surrenders. Look inside for the answers you seek. We've been told this all along. The messages are already there. Listen. Kamal Ravikant, in his wonderful, wonderful book, Living Your Truth. The insights we receive when going silent are a gift to ourselves. Living and sharing them is our gift to the world. So, I want to just wrap up now, actually. And I've talked about some of the quotes that have really helped guide me. And perhaps one or two of those quotes have resonated with you too. And if they have, they will have resonated with your soul, with your spirit, with the part of you that in the West we don't really understand. But the Aborigines seem to. We don't know the answers. But that's okay. That's okay. Michelangelo, when he talked about the statue David, he said, I saw the angel in the marble, and I carved to set him free. I stand here today. I look at you all, and I see angels alive with purpose. Become who you already are. I have a message for you. How do you connect to your purpose? Know that you were never disconnected in the first place. Thank you.